Nick Freitas joining us now. Just coming off a big fundraising quarter, $520,000 raised for his writing. I love this writing campaign. Look, I know he screwed the paperwork up. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I've already been down that path. We've already been over that. But I love the fact we got this writing campaign. See, I think this is fun. And then you're in my business, this is fun. Like, he could have tucked tail and ran away. No, he went out and raised $520,000 to do a write-in campaign. And it's kind of cool. And so stop whining about who didn't do what paperwork on the ballot. That's yesterday's news. I look forward, not backwards. But I love the spirit of the write-in campaign in Culpeper. I think it's cool and it's fun. I wish I had a write-in campaign here in my district. So I'm represented by, what district am I in? Cliff Hayes? I guess I could write somebody in. Although I like Cliff Hayes. I don't think he's got any opposition here. Does he have any opposition, Cliff Hayes? Nice guy, though, actually. I'll probably vote for him because there's no one else, so I could write somebody in. I'll write in the same with the cat. Anyway, joining us now, fresh off a $500,000 fundraising quarter, Nick Freitas, House of Delegates member, Culpeper. Nick, great to have you with us.
Hey, great to be on, John.
Okay, look, I love this write-in campaign. I'm not even going to hide my excitement about it. And, I teach my children, like, attitude and how you look at things is everything, right? Everything is relative. And so you screw up, you got to turn lemons into lemonade. And for every negative reaction, there's a positive reaction, only bigger if you can find it. You got to be able to find it, though, and everybody can find it. So instead of, dropping your head and tucking tail and running away, you're doing this writing campaign. Plus, you went out and raised the money. Now you're giving money to other candidates. What is going on? How did you pull this off, and how's your campaign going?
Well, no, the campaign's going really well. In fact, we've knocked on close to 10,000 doors so far. We're going to knock on another 30,000. We've got some other people helping us out that by the time we're done, we'll have knocked on 60,000. We really thought we were going to have to do a lot more voter education at the doors when we were talking to Republican voters, just letting them know what happened and what they needed to do. And what we found is the majority of people already know exactly what they need to do and are excited about it. And then the other half, once we explain everything that went on, they're motivated to get out and vote for our Republican ticket. So, that's obviously very encouraging. We've got some good polling coming back. And then when it came to the fundraising component, look, I looked at this from the perspective of we can be really upset by the way everything went down, or we can use it as an opportunity to fundraise like we've never done before and not only positively affect our election, but we can positively affect other elections again. And we can send a message that, you can try all you want to try to keep us down, but we're just going to come back swinging even stronger. And it has. It's allowed us to give around 70,000 to other candidates so far. We've already got more planned to go out in some of these tight races that we know we've got to win. And then we've also got what we need in order to ensure that we can win the right in the 30th district as well. So that's how we're going.
You know what? I love what you're doing, and I just love the excitement of it. And look, I got to tell you, a lot of people had Ben Tribbett on the other day, and he said, it's going to be very close. It's a toss-up. I think you're going to get 55, 56% of the vote. And then he said, well, that's under 1,000. I don't care what the numbers are. I think you're going to win. I think you're going to win handily because, you're well-liked and you're going to pull this off and orchestrate it. And plus, I like the fact that people are going and writing your name in. I also think if you're able to win this big, I think it's going to send a message that, Nick Freitas can't get screwed with. And but the other message it sends is this, okay, there was a screw up and you found a way around it in order to go forward. And I think that's the bigger message here, Nick, isn't it?
Well, no, in a lot of cases, I mean, look, it's politics and it's life in general, right? Things aren't always going to go your way. The question is what do you do when things get difficult? And I think one of the reasons why people respect the president so much is that guy hasn't gotten a fair shake from anybody since he's been in office, but he doesn't let him stop what he's trying to do. He fights for it and he continues on. And that's the same sort of thing that Republicans need to do across the board. If you're sitting around waiting for the media to give you a fair shake, if you're sitting around waiting for, big liberal organizations to stop donating money into Virginia campaigns, well, that's a losing strategy, right? Get up and go do what you need to do, not just to win your race, but to help your fellow Republican candidates so that we don't wake up on November 6th with a Virginia that we're not going to recognize.
Absolutely. When you're talking to people, knocking on doors and asking them to write your name in, what are they saying?
Again, over half of them say, we already know, we're writing you in, good luck, keep working. The other half say, "Could you just, what exactly happened?" And we explain the process. But what's fascinating is that we do have some voters out there, and a lot of them are people that typically maybe they only vote in presidential years or they only vote when it's federal elections. And we're starting to explain to them some of the legislation that the Democrats tried to carry the last several years, and they can't believe it. They thought these were things that were relegated to, the state of New York, or they thought it was just things that Ocasio-Cortez or Tlaib or Omar were talking about at the federal level. They had no idea that Democrats in the Virginia General Assembly were trying to do things in Virginia, like, again, get rid of right to work or drastically increasing the minimum wage. I mean, my gosh, we got a member of the Virginia General Assembly that just tried to join Antifa. Right, these are the sort of things that they were not even aware of because, quite frankly, most outlets, this one being an obvious exception to the rule, but most outlets don't even want to report that sort of thing. And so once voters actually become aware of how extreme elements of the Democratic Party have become within Virginia, they get motivated. But again, they have to be made aware of it because, again, people are out there living their lives. They're raising their families. They're working on their business. But this is the time where we need them to really focus on what's going on and to truly understand what's at stake.
Nick, I got to tell you, the only outlet that reported Lee Carter, and I call him #CommieLee, Lee Carter's promise on Facebook that he would defend Antifa, the only person who reported on that was John Fredericks. No Washington Post.
John. I'm not at all surprised.
No Richmond Times-Dispatch. No weekly newspaper in Manassas. No other outlet. Nothing. I mean, could you imagine if a Republican had put something like that on Facebook about some right-wing supremacist organization? Could you imagine? It would have been on national news. It would have been in the New York Times. Yet this guy says it is time for us to defend Antifa. This is an organization that hurls Molotov cocktails at people, that beats people up with clubs and bats and hoods. This is an organization whose one of their district leaders went to Portland, Oregon with an AR-15 and got shot dead by cops. I mean, that's the organization Antifa is. And this guy's running for re-election in the House of Delegates, and nobody reports it, and it's public information. What do you say to that?
John, but here's another good question. I mean, one, it's public information because he put it out on his own Twitter account, right? It's not like he's hiding the ball here. But you're right. Too many of these media organizations, had it been a Republican doing something this stupid on the other side, it would have been national news. And guess what? It should be if a Republican does something that's stupid.
That's right,
But
Nick.
when a Democrat does it, it's all about how do they make sure that they carry the water for the Democratic Party, that they make sure that they stick to the talking points, and they don't break out what I think would be pretty useful information to the voters of Manassas, that their sitting delegate wants to defend Antifa, says he's going to join Antifa, says we got to join with the communists to support Antifa against fascism, right, alluding toward this administration. But again, it's radio silence on that. But again, we can complain about it. We can get, or we can actually turn our frustration into this into action. Get out there, raise money for our candidates, knock doors, get on social media, get on outlets like this one where you'll actually report what's going on, information that people need to know before they walk into a ballot box so they can actually be an informed voter. Right? That's the sort of thing that we need to be doing. So I'm again, I'll call out the media when I think they're doing the wrong thing, but I'm not going to just stop with doing a Facebook post. Instead, I'm going to commit myself. If they want to go ahead and ignore a story like this, fine. I'm going to make sure I give $5,000 to a Republican. I'm going to make sure I give $5,000 to Ian Lovejoy to make sure that can make up for the complete lack of media attention on things that his opponent is doing.
Well, he needs $5,000. He's running a good race, and I'm predicting Ian Lovejoy is going to beat Lee Carter, and thank you for that. We're on the John Fredericks Radio Network and the John Fredericks Radio app. We're with Nick Freitas, House of Delegates member, Republican Culpeper area. Nick is running for re-election. He missed getting the paperwork in. His name is not on the ballot. He will have to run as a write-in, and he is doing fine. I got a text here from one of our listeners. Where are the calls for Carter's resignation? That's a good question. Also, Nick, when does absentee balloting start?
So there's a couple different ways you can vote absentee. Absentee balloting is going to start here in the next, I believe it's next week. But you can also do early voting all the way up until 2 weeks before the election, I believe is what the law just changed into. So the best thing that you can do if you want any specifics with respect to absentee, with respect to early voting, what you need to do is call your local registrar within your county. So just go to your county website, look for the registrar. You can get all the specific dates on where you need to be, what paperwork you need to file to make sure that you're able to vote if for some reason you don't think you're going to be able to get out on Election Day.
All right, so you want to be able to do that starting pretty soon, and you want to write in, if you're in Culpeper or Nick's district, you want to be able to write that in, his name. Now, Nick, what happens if they spell your name wrong? Like your name is Freitas. What if somebody says Freits?
Sure, and we've actually had some people trying to scare voters into believing, or I probably kind of disparage voters into thinking that if they don't spell it perfectly correct, then it's not going to count, so why bother? Here's the reality. Is the way Virginia law reads is that as long as you can clearly ascertain the voter's intention, the vote will count. So what we're doing is we're making sure everyone has the information they need before they go into the polls on Election Day. They're going to be getting mailers. They're going to have information at the polling locations when they walk in, to where they know how to spell the name correctly. They know to fill in the little bubble next to the name so the computer can pick it up and tabulate it on election night. But voters should understand that as long as they come in and as long as they make a good faith effort to spell the name correctly, that vote can still be counted, even if a letter's off here or there.
All right, Nick Freitas, Freitas, Freitas. So you want to remember that. Okay, Nick, stay with us. We got a couple other things to go here. Now, you raised $500,000 from one donor in Illinois. A lot of Virginia Democrats running for the House and Senate are getting $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 checks a pop from dark money Michael Bills in Charlottesville and his wife, Sonia Smith. They can get up to 50, they can get 30, but they have to sign a document. They have to sign a pledge to get the check, to get a donation of $30,000, $40,000, or $50,000 from dark money Michael Bills in Charlottesville. They have to sign a document that says, I will pledge to this, and then they get money. Did you have to sign anything to get your $500,000 donation?
John, if someone required me to sign something to get a donation, I'd hang up on them. I mean, that's just the bottom line. What I tell people, what I tell my donors, whoever they are, is this is what I believe, this is what I intend to do. But I don't do this quid pro quo thing. I think I've made that very, very clear throughout my record within the General Assembly, and this year especially. I don't do favors in exchange for support or in exchange for donations. So no, the donor believes in the message that I'm carrying. He believes in the ideas of individual liberty, private property rights, low taxes, free markets. And so he wanted to make sure that we were contributing not just to my campaign, but we were actually able to move the needle in Virginia. I mean, let's face it, there's a whole bunch of dark money groups spending millions upon millions of dollars on Democrat races, and you better believe they have some expectations with respect to how they will vote and govern should they take the majority. Again, I'm not going to take that route. I'll be very honest with what I believe, and my record, I think, speaks for itself. And my donors obviously believe that, and so they were willing to contribute. But they don't get anything out of it other than they want to be able to send a message to the entire country that Virginia is one of the few places that has elections this year. They realize that it's a battleground. They realize that the entire country has its eyes on Virginia, that they want to make sure that we maintain the House and the Senate in Virginia, that we want to have a strong showing in 2019 so that we can prove that Virginia is in play in 2020. We are not a blue state, right? We are a swing state, and Republicans have a shot here as long as Republicans are willing to band together and work hard in order to make sure that our values are fairly represented and that we defend them unapologetically. And when we do so, donors pay attention because they realize it's not only good for Virginia, but it's good for the whole country if Republicans can stem the blue wave that has been taking place in certain areas.
The money they're getting, your opponents, the Democrats are getting in Virginia from dark money Michael Bills in Charlottesville and his wife, Sonia Smith. And by the way, they even hide that so people don't make the connection. You have to sign a pledge. Is that not a quid pro quo?
Oh, I think it is. I think anytime somebody says, in fact, Virginia law essentially says that someone's not allowed to, like a lobbyist, for instance, is not allowed to say, hey, let's talk about this policy position. Let's talk about this bill that I want you to carry. And, oh, by the way, if you carry that bill, here's, some money. That's illegal, right? So some of these dark money groups saying that if you don't sign this, then we're not going to give you any campaign contributions. I mean, that's pretty shady. So, again, I think it's something to be leery of if you're a voter, if not on legal grounds, and certainly on ethical ones.
I've been very critical of the Republican Party so far in Virginia because there's no coherent message, and I've got you guys losing right now. I think if the election were held today, the Democrats would win both houses. Game, set, match, political Armageddon for Republicans. I've been saying this for 2 weeks, trying to ring the alarm bell and get people to wake up right now. What is the Republican message? We got 50 days. I got Glenn Sturdivant running an ad with Mr. Smoothie ice cream. I'm just befuddled by the whole thing. What's the Republicans' message?
There's two messages here. One, Virginia just got ranked number one in business in the country, and the reason for that is exclusively because of Republican leadership on things like the Red Tape Reduction Act, which Delegate Mike Weber carried. It's things like keeping taxes low and making this a business-friendly environment, because when the economy is going well, it's something that helps out every single Virginian. That's the positive aspect of what Republican policy means for Virginia voters. And then on the other side, it's about everyone understanding that if the Democrats take control, they're going to wake up to a very different Virginia in 2020. It's going to be a Virginia where right to work is out the window. It's going to be a Virginia where they start raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour or higher, which is not only going to hurt small businesses, it's going to hurt those people that need the most job experience because they can't get hired anymore. It's going to lead to gun confiscation. And people say that's hyperbole, but I'm telling you right now, all you need to do is listen to Beto O'Rourke and the Democrat presidential candidates to know that it's coming in Virginia. So this is two things. If you like the idea that we are a great place to raise a family, to educate your kids, and to run a business, that is directly as a result of Republican policies within the General Assembly. And if you don't want to be the sort of place where a union gets to decide whether or not you get to keep your job, if you don't want to be the sort of place where we create an adversarial relationship between the government's regulatory agencies and your business, if you don't want us to be the sort of place where your tax dollars fund abortion all the way up to the point of birth for virtually any reason, if you don't want Virginia to be the sort of place where your guns can be arbitrarily confiscated from you from the government because some Democrats have decided that it's scary looking, then you have to get out and vote. This really is a battle between two diametrically opposed worldviews at this time, and the consequences of this next election are going to be significant for Virginia and how we look going forward.
Look, the gun debate is real, and you and I debated this the other day, and I'm in favor of Jason Miera's bill that wants to extend red flag and get rid of the loophole. We've debated that, you and I. We don't see eye to eye on it, but there's due process. I think that's a pretty common sense approach that Miera has. David backs it. Tim Hugo backs it. Makes sense to me. Mary Margaret Castleberg, one of the candidates that a lot of Republicans think can win. That's an open seat that Rodman's leaving. She's running for U.S. Senate in what I think will be a losing campaign against Siobhan Donovan. She's coming out with a TV ad today as Republican calling for red flag expansion. Okay, I get that. Calling for ending the universal background check loophole. I'm for that. But also limiting magazines, which I was shocked to see that, because look, I'm not where you are on universal background checks and red flag, and we can agree to disagree. But I really think, Nick, once you go down the road of start to limiting magazines, then you go down the slippery path. Now it's 100 today, 10 tomorrow, and then finally we get to Beto's BB gun. And to me, that's garbling the Republicans' message. What say you?
I think what we should be focused on as Republicans is more legislation like what Todd Gilbert is suggesting, which are actually based on not only evidence, not only academic evidence, but it's actually worked. And that's when we go into a community and we find out, okay, what sort of laws have we passed in other places which have actually prevented violence, right? Not just gun violence, all types of violence. Which ones have led to getting more people that are dangerous off of the streets and then put them into programs where, again, hopefully in the future, they can be reintroduced into the community as productive citizens. That's the thing that we should be pushing as Republicans when it comes to actually dealing with violence issues, not arbitrarily picking some inanimate object like a magazine and make believing that that's the problem or that's really going to solve people or make people safer. So I think the legislation that we focused on as the Republican caucus, whether it was more school resource officers, whether it was more counseling within schools and dealing with mental health issues, or whether it's Todd Gilbert's bill, where we start to talk about what we actually have to do in these communities where we're seeing the most violence or the most potential for violence, and making sure that we pour resources in there in order to stop it before it happens, or when it does happen, to quickly be able to respond effectively in order to make sure that our communities and our schools are safer. So I think when we stick to that, it's not just a message. When we stick to those policies, which we know have worked in other areas, that's going to be the way that we actually convince voters that we're serious about dealing with violence. And that's the direction I think we should be going with.
Can you guys hold the House?
Yes, we can. We absolutely can hold the House, but we do need people to take this election very seriously. We need every single Republican that votes in presidential year elections to understand that if you get the president you want, but you don't get the governor, the attorney general, lieutenant governor, or the general assembly you want, it's not going to save you. It's not going to save your Second Amendment rights. It's not going to save the unborn. It's not going to save your business. You have to be engaged not only at the federal level, you have to be engaged at the state and local level as well. And if we can convince Republicans of that, if we can convince them that we will actually stand by what we believe, not just during campaign season, but actually when we're in the legislature, then I think we can convince people to show up and we can hold the House.
Nick Freitas, I've been ringing the alarm bell here for 2 weeks because I think you guys are losing right now, and we see a lot of infighting amongst Republicans, notably the asinine nonsense that's gone on with Denver Riggleman in the 5th District because he presided over a gay wedding of his constituents in his district, and he's being censored and stuff like that. Complete and utter waste of time with 50 days remaining. What is your message right now for Republicans? I got a half a minute. What is your message to stop fighting, get your act together, and try to turn the tide here and win this election?
My message is twofold. The first one to legislators is, look, be honest about what you believe, and then when you get to the legislature, do your job so that your constituents can trust you. My message to constituents and my message to voters is, again, it goes back to that initial thing that we talked about. We've done a lot of good things in Virginia, and we have prevented a lot of bad things from happening. And we need the voters to understand that, again, they will not recognize the Virginia they've grown up in if this new batch, if this new leadership within the Democratic Party takes over and takes control of the General Assembly. So hold us accountable. Hold us accountable. Every right to do that. But please fight alongside us when we're doing everything we can to protect the individual rights, liberties, private property, and businesses of Virginia.
The crazies are at the gate. Nick, thanks for being with us. Nick Freitas, what's your website?
So if you go to nick4va.com, that's NICKFORVA.com, and then please follow us on